John Hawthorne stared out the window of his suburban home, watching the alien ships glide silently across the evening sky. Even after 5 years of peaceful coexistence, the sight still filled him with a mix of wonder and unease. He sighed, running a hand through his graying hair. At 47, he felt like he'd aged a decade since the divorce. The doorbell chimed, startling him from his reverie. John straightened his shirt and walked to the front door, pulse quickening. This was it. His new alien housekeeper had arrived. He opened the door and froze. The young woman, alien, he corrected himself, standing on his porch was breathtaking. Her skin was a soft shade of blue that seemed to shimmer in the fading sunlight. Dark, iridescent hair fell in waves past her shoulders, but it was her eyes that captivated him, large and almond-shaped, with swirling patterns of silver and violet. "Greetings, John Hawthorne," she said, her voice melodic. "I am Araya. The Intercultural Exchange Service sent me to be your housekeeper." John realized he was staring and quickly stepped back. "Of course, please come in. It's nice to meet you, Araya." As she glided past him into the foyer, John caught a whiff of an exotic, floral scent. He swallowed hard. This was going to be more challenging than he'd anticipated. Araya looked around the entryway with unabashed curiosity, running her slender blue fingers along the wallpaper. "Your dwelling is most intriguing, John Hawthorne. So many enclosed spaces." "Just John is fine," he said, closing the door. "And yes, I suppose human homes are quite different from what you're used to. Would you like a tour?" Aria's eyes lit up. "Oh yes, I would be most pleased to explore your habitat." As John led her through the house, he found himself both amused and slightly unnerved by Aria's enthusiastic examination of everyday objects. She marveled at the kitchen appliances, peppered him with questions about the television, and seemed particularly fascinated by the houseplants. "These green beings," Aria said, stroking a fern frond. "You keep them captive for decoration?" John chuckled. "Not exactly. They're not sentient like your people's flora, just ordinary plants." Aria tilted her head, clearly unconvinced. Perhaps they simply haven't revealed their true nature to you yet." They reached the second floor and John gestured to a door on the left. "This will be your room. I hope it's comfortable enough." Aria peered inside, her expression unreadable. "It is very enclosed. Do humans truly sleep in such small spaces?" "Well, yes," John replied, suddenly self-conscious. "Don't your people have private bedrooms?" Aria's musical laugh filled the hallway. "Oh, John, the concept of private spaces is quite foreign to us. On my world, we live in communal dwellings. Sleeping, eating, bathing, all are shared experiences." John felt heat rise to his cheeks. "I see. Well, Earth customs are a bit different. We value personal space and privacy, especially for things like sleeping and bathing." Aria's gaze sharpened with interest. "Fascinating. And why is that? Does your species require solitude for these activities?" "Not exactly," John said, scrambling for a diplomatic explanation. "It's more about modesty and personal boundaries. Humans generally prefer to be alone or with intimate partners for certain private moments." "Intimate partners," Aria repeated, testing the words. "This is a mating concept?" John coughed, his face now burning. "That's one aspect, yes, but it's complicated. Maybe we should discuss human social norms another time. For now, just remember to knock before entering someone's bedroom or bathroom, okay?" Aria nodded solemnly. "I shall endeavor to respect these strange human customs, John." As the days passed, John found himself both charmed and exasperated by his alien housekeeper. Araya approached every task with boundless enthusiasm, but her unfamiliarity with human technology led to several mishaps. The laundry incident, involving far too much detergent in a flooded utility room, had been particularly memorable, but it was Aria's constant questions and observations that truly kept John on his toes. Her unique perspective forced him to reconsider aspects of daily life he'd always taken for granted. One evening, as John prepared dinner, Aria hovered nearby, peppering him with inquiries. "John, why do humans insist on altering the molecular structure of their sustenance through the application of heat?" she asked, wrinkling her nose at the sizzling pan. He chuckled, stirring the vegetables. "You mean cooking? It makes the food tastier and easier to digest. Don't tell me your people eat everything raw. Aria's skin shifted to a deeper shade of blue, her species equivalent of a blush, John had learned. We absorb nutrients directly through our epidermal layer, she explained. The concept of inserting substances into a body cavity for processing is rather alien to us. John nearly dropped his spatula. Wait, you mean you don't eat at all? How do you... He gestured vaguely at her mouth. Aria's lips curved into a mischievous smile. Oh, this orifice serves other purposes. Communication primarily, and certain intimate activities. Their eyes met, and John felt a jolt of electricity run through him. He quickly turned back to the stove, pulse racing. Right. Well, humans use our mouths for those things too. And eating, which I should really focus on right now. Aria's musical laughter filled the kitchen. Oh, John, your epidermis is changing pigmentation again. Is this another sign of discomfort with intimate topics? John groaned inwardly. Living with Aria was proving to be an exercise in perpetual embarrassment, and something far more dangerous he wasn't ready to name. As the weeks went by, John found himself growing increasingly aware of Aria's presence in his home. It wasn't just her striking appearance or intoxicating scent. There was something about her open curiosity, her fresh perspective on the world, that made him feel truly alive for the first time since his divorce. One lazy Sunday afternoon, John was engrossed in a book when Aria's voice startled him. John, I require clarification on a human hygiene ritual. He looked up to find her standing uncomfortably close, head tilted in that endearing way that signaled a barrage of questions was incoming. Sure, Aria. What's on your mind? She gestured towards the bathroom. I've observed that you frequently enter that small tiled room and activate a mechanism that releases streams of water. Yet you emerge appearing no cleaner than before. What is the purpose of this exercise? John blinked, processing her words. Oh, you mean showering? It's how humans clean themselves. The water and soap wash away dirt, sweat, and bacteria. Aria's brow furrowed. But your epidermis appeared free of contaminants prior to this ritual. And why isolate oneself for cleansing? On my world, it is a communal activity that strengthens social bonds. John felt his cheeks grow warm. Well, as I've mentioned, humans value privacy for certain activities. Bathing is usually done alone or with, intimate partners. Aria's eyes widened with interest. Ah, so it is a mating ritual as well? Fascinating. I had wondered about the purpose of that large water receptacle in your sleeping chamber. What? No, John sputtered. I mean, sometimes couples shower together, but it's not primarily about that. He ran a hand through his hair, flustered. Look, showering is just about getting clean. The privacy is for modesty's sake. Humans are usually uncomfortable being naked around others. Aria tilted her head, clearly perplexed. But why? Your body is simply a natural housing for your consciousness. What is there to conceal? John sighed. How could he explain generations of complex social norms and ingrained modesty to someone from a completely different culture? It's complicated, he said finally. Humans have a lot of cultural and emotional associations with nudity. Being naked makes most of us feel vulnerable. Aria considered this for a moment. I see. And yet you willingly make yourself vulnerable in this way on a daily basis. How curious. Her gaze sharpened with interest. I should very much like to observe this ritual. For scientific purposes, of course. John nearly choked. Absolutely not. That would be extremely inappropriate. Aria's skin darkened to a deep indigo. A sign of disappointment, John had learned. I see. Another human taboo I've inadvertently violated. My apologies, John. He softened at her crestfallen expression. It's okay, Aria. I know you're just trying to understand our culture. But some things are off limits, even for scientific observation. Okay? She nodded solemnly. I shall respect your boundaries, John, though I admit I find many human customs most perplexing. As she glided away, John let out a shaky breath. Living with Aria was proving to be in constant exercise in cultural navigation, and a dangerous test of his self-control. The incident faded from John's mind over the next few days, but Aria's curiosity about human bathing rituals had clearly not abated. He caught her examining the shower with great interest on several occasions, and her questions about hygiene practices grew increasingly specific. John did his best to provide clinical explanations while maintaining appropriate boundaries, but he couldn't shake a growing sense of unease. Aria's innocent inquisitiveness was charming, but her complete lack of understanding regarding human modesty was a potential powder keg. His fears were realized one fateful morning. John had just stepped into the shower, relishing the hot water cascading over his tired muscles, when the bathroom door suddenly flew open. "John, I've been conducting research on human cleansing rituals, and I have several important queries." Aria's voice cut off abruptly as she registered the scene before her. John yelped in surprise, instinctively trying to cover himself with his hands. "Aria, what the hell? Get out!" But Aria made no move to leave. Instead, she stepped closer, her luminous eyes wide with fascination. "Oh, I see you are in the midst of your hygiene procedure. How fortuitous. Now I can finally observe the process firsthand." "No, absolutely not," John sputtered, fumbling for the shower curtain. "This is completely inappropriate. You need to leave right now." Aria tilted her head, confusion evident on her delicate features. "But why? I thought we had progressed beyond mere employer and domestic assistant. Are we not friends, John?" "On my world, friends share all experiences." John felt a mix of frustration and something dangerously close to arousal coursing through him. Aria's otherworldly beauty, combined with her complete innocence regarding the situation, was severely testing his self-control. "Aria, please," he said, struggling to keep his voice steady. "Human friends do not watch each other shower. This is a very private activity. You're making me extremely uncomfortable." A flicker of hurt passed across Aria's face. "I see. I violated your cultural norms again, haven't I?" "I do apologize, John. I only wish to understand." Her gaze drifted lower, and John saw her eyes widen. He realized with horror that in his shock, he'd let go of the shower curtain, leaving himself fully exposed. "Fascinating," Aria breathed, leaning in for a closer look. "Your species' reproductive organs are external? How terribly inconvenient. No wonder you insist on all this privacy." John's face burned with embarrassment and something else he didn't dare name. "Aria," he said through gritted teeth, "I need you to turn around, walk out that door, and close it behind you. Right now." Something in his tone must have finally gotten through to her. Aria straightened, her skin flushing a deep indigo. "Of course, I've caused you distress. That was never my intent." She backed towards the door, but paused on the threshold. "John? I truly am sorry. I hope this hasn't damaged our friendship." With that, she was gone, leaving John alone with the steam and his tumultuous thoughts. He leaned his forehead against the cool tile, pulse racing. What had just happened? And more importantly, how was he going to face Aria after this mortifying encounter? As the water continued to beat down on him, John realized with a sinking feeling that his life had just become infinitely more complicated. The boundaries between employer and employee, human and alien, friend and something more, had been irrevocably blurred, and he had no idea where they went from here. With a groan, John turned off the shower and reached for a towel. He had a feeling this was only the beginning of a very strange and potentially dangerous journey. But as he recalled the look of innocent wonder in Aria's otherworldly eyes, he couldn't quite bring himself to regret it. John emerged from the bathroom, a towel wrapped tightly around his waist. His heart hammered in his chest as he peered down the hallway, half expecting to see Aria waiting for him. The coast was clear, but the alien's presence seemed to linger in the air like her intoxicating scent. He ducked into his bedroom, closing the door firmly behind him. As he dressed, his mind raced. How could he possibly face Aria after what had just transpired? The innocence in her eyes haunted him, stirring feelings he'd thought long buried. A soft knock at the door made him jump. "John? May I enter your personal space?" Aria's melodic voice called out. He took a deep breath, steeling himself. "Just a moment," he called back, hastily pulling on a shirt. "Okay, come in." The door opened and Aria glided into the room. Her skin had shifted to a deep, shimmering indigo, a sign of distress John had learned. John, I must express my deepest regrets for my earlier transgression, she began, her large eyes filled with genuine remorse. I've been researching human customs, and I now understand the gravity of my actions. I violated your privacy in a most egregious manner. John sighed, running a hand through his damp hair. It's, well, it's not okay exactly. But I understand you didn't mean any harm. We clearly need to have a serious discussion about boundaries and cultural differences. Arya nodded eagerly. Yes, I would very much like that. Your species' concepts of privacy and shame surrounding natural biological functions are fascinating to me. On my world, we celebrate the body in all its forms. John felt his cheeks grow warm. Right. Well, maybe we should start with some basic ground rules. Rule number 1, always knock and wait for permission before entering someone's bedroom or bathroom. Understood? Arya said solemnly. And what of other rooms? The food preparation area? The waste elimination chamber? Kitchen and bathroom, John corrected automatically. And yes, it's generally polite to announce yourself before entering any room someone's in, especially if the door is closed. Arya's brow furrowed. But how does one know if a room is occupied without opening the door to look inside? John couldn't help but chuckle. That's what knocking is for. You tap on the door to alert anyone inside to your presence. Ah, I see. Arya's eyes lit up with understanding. A most clever system, though it seems terribly inefficient compared to our communal living structures. As they continued their cultural exchange, John found himself relaxing. Arya's genuine curiosity and eagerness to learn were endearing, and if he was being honest with himself, her otherworldly beauty and innocence were becoming increasingly difficult to ignore. Over the next few weeks, John and Arya fell into a new rhythm. She was a quick study when it came to human social norms, though her alien perspective often led to amusing misunderstandings. John found himself looking forward to their evening conversations, where they'd discuss everything from Earth history to the intricacies of alien biology. One night, as they sat on the porch watching the stars, Arya turned to John with an intense expression. John, there is something I've been meaning to ask you. It pertains to human mating rituals. John nearly choked on his beer. Oh? What? What did you want to know? Arya's skin rippled with iridescent patterns, a sign of excitement or nervousness. John wasn't sure which. I've observed that humans engage in a curious behavior called kissing. It seems to involve pressing one's oral orifices together. What is the purpose of this act? John felt his face grow hot. Well, it's a way of showing affection or attraction. It can be a prelude to more intimate activities. Arya leaned in closer, her eyes wide with fascination. How intriguing! And does this kissing serve a biological function? Is it necessary for human reproduction? Not exactly, John said, acutely aware of Arya's proximity. Her floral scent enveloped him, making it hard to think straight. It's more about pleasure and emotional connection. Pleasure, Arya repeated, testing the word. This is a concept my people struggle to understand. We reproduce through spore dissemination. The act is purely functional. John shifted uncomfortably. Well, for humans, physical intimacy is about more than just reproduction. It's a way of expressing love, desire, connecting with another person on a deep level. Arya's gaze intensified. And have you experienced this connection often, John? Before your mate separation ritual? Divorce, he corrected automatically. And it's been a while. He looked away, suddenly feeling very vulnerable. My ex-wife and I, we grew apart. Lost that connection. Arya placed a cool blue hand on his arm. I'm sorry, John. Loneliness is a concept I've come to understand since arriving on your world. It seems a heavy burden to bear. John met her eyes, seeing compassion and something else he couldn't quite name. Thank you, Arya. I'm glad you're here. The moment stretched between them, charged with unspoken possibilities. Then Arya broke the spell, tilting her head curiously. John, would you be willing to demonstrate this kissing ritual? For scientific purposes, of course. John's heart skipped a beat. Arya, that wouldn't be appropriate. You're my employee and an alien. There are ethical considerations. Arya's skin darkened with disappointment. I see. Another human taboo I've stumbled upon. My apologies, John. As she turned away, John found himself reaching for her hand. Wait, he said softly. It's not that I don't want to. It's just complicated. Aria's luminous eyes met his, filled with hope and curiosity. Perhaps you could explain these complications. I am here to learn, after all. And so John found himself stumbling through an explanation of workplace dynamics, power imbalances, and the potential pitfalls of interspecies relationships. Aria listened intently, asking probing questions that forced John to confront his own biases and fears. As the night wore on, John realized that his feelings for Aria had grown far beyond mere curiosity or attraction. Her unique perspective challenged him, made him see the world and himself in new ways. But could anything real ever come of it? The next morning, John awoke to the sound of shattering glass and a startled yelp. He bolted out of bed and raced downstairs to find Aria standing in the kitchen, surrounded by broken dishes and splattered food. Aria, are you okay? He asked, carefully picking his way through the mess. She turned to him, her skin a swirling mix of embarrassed indigo and distressed green. John, I was attempting to prepare your morning sustenance as a gesture of goodwill, but I'm afraid I've made a terrible mess of things. John couldn't help but laugh at the absurdity of the situation. Here was an advanced alien being, capable of interstellar travel, utterly defeated by a simple breakfast. It's okay, Aria, he said, reaching for a broom. We'll clean this up together. Then I'll show you how to make pancakes without destroying the kitchen. As they worked side by side, John found himself hyper-aware of Aria's presence. The way she moved with fluid grace, the subtle changes in her skin tone reflecting her emotions. When their hands brushed accidentally, he felt a jolt of electricity that had nothing to do with her alien biology. John, Aria said suddenly, her voice uncharacteristically hesitant. I've been thinking about our discussion last night, about human relationships and the concept of kissing. John's heart rate quickened. Oh? What about it? Aria set down the dustpan and turned to face him fully. I believe I understand now why you were reluctant to demonstrate. Such an act would hold great significance in your culture, yes? It would alter the nature of our relationship. That's right, John managed, throat suddenly dry. Aria's skin rippled with iridescent patterns. I've come to a conclusion, John. I would very much like to alter the nature of our relationship. If you are amenable, of course. John's mind raced. This was everything he'd been secretly longing for, and everything he'd been afraid of. Aria, are you sure? There's so much you don't understand about human relationships, and I'm so much older than you, in human terms. Aria stepped closer, her otherworldly eyes boring into his. Age is irrelevant to my people, John. We value experience and wisdom. As for human relationships, is not the point of my time here to learn? And who better to teach me than someone I've come to care for deeply? The air between them crackled with tension. John knew he stood at a crossroads. He could retreat to the safety of cultural differences and professional boundaries. Or he could take a leap into the unknown, embracing the connection he felt with this remarkable being. Before he could overthink it, John closed the distance between them. He cupped Aria's face gently in his hands, marveling at the silky texture of her blue skin. Are you sure about this? He whispered. Aria's answer was to lean in, pressing her lips to his. The kiss was tentative at first, both of them exploring unfamiliar territory. Then something shifted, and John felt himself falling into the sensation. Aria's lips were cool and slightly metallic, but the emotion behind the kiss was unmistakably real. When they finally parted, both slightly breathless, Aria's skin was glowing with a soft, pulsing light. Fascinating, she murmured. I believe I now understand the appeal of this ritual. John laughed, feeling lighter than he had in years. That's one way to put it. But their newfound bliss was short-lived. As they stood in the kitchen, still wrapped in each other's arms, the doorbell rang. John froze, a sense of foreboding washing over him. Were you expecting visitors? Aria asked, picking up on his tension. John shook his head. No, I wasn't. He reluctantly disentangled himself from Aria and made his way to the front door. He opened it to find a stern-faced woman in a crisp business suit. "Mr. Hawthorne?" she asked, her tone clipped. "I'm Amanda Anderson from the Interspecies Relations Board. We've received some concerning reports about your living situation with an alien housekeeper. I'm here to conduct an inspection." John's stomach dropped. He glanced back at Iria, who had followed him to the foyer. Her skin had shifted to a wary shade of gray. "Of course," John said, forcing a smile. "Please come in. We have nothing to hide." As he ushered the inspector inside, John couldn't shake the feeling that everything was about to change. The fragile connection he and Iria had forged was about to be put to the test, and he had no idea if they were ready for the challenges ahead. The inspection was grueling. Amanda Anderson moved through the house with clinical efficiency, making notes on her tablet and asking probing questions about John and Iria's living arrangements. "And you maintain separate sleeping quarters?" she asked, eyeing the guest room Iria had been using. "Of course," John replied, perhaps a bit too quickly. "Iria has her own room, and I respect her privacy completely." Anderson's eyes narrowed. "I see. And what about cultural exchange activities? Our records show you were part of the first human-alien exchange program, Mr. Hawthorne. Have you been educating your housekeeper about Earth customs?" John felt a bead of sweat form on his brow. "Yes, absolutely. Iria's been learning all about human society. We often discuss cultural differences." Anderson made another note on her tablet. "And what about you, Iria? What have you learned about humans during your time here?" Iria's skin rippled with nervous energy, but her voice was steady when she spoke. "I have learned a great deal, Miss Anderson. Humans are fascinating creatures, with complex social structures and emotional depth I never anticipated. John has been an excellent teacher." Something in Iria's tone made John glance at her sharply. There was a warmth there, an undercurrent of affection that he prayed the inspector wouldn't pick up on. But Anderson was more perceptive than he'd given her credit for. Her gaze flicked between John and Iria, a slight frown creasing her brow. "I see. And have there been any misunderstandings regarding personal boundaries or human social norms?" John felt his face grow hot, remembering the shower incident. "Nothing major," he said, trying to keep his voice casual. "Just the usual cultural mix-ups you'd expect." Anderson's eyes bored into him. "Mr. Hawthorne, I hope you understand the delicate nature of interspecies relations. Any inappropriate behavior or exploitation could have serious consequences, both personally and diplomatically." "Of course," John said stiffly. "I assure you, everything here is completely above board." But even as the words left his mouth, John knew they weren't entirely true. The kiss he and Iria had shared just that morning felt like a damning secret, burning in his chest. As Anderson completed her inspection and prepared to leave, she fixed John with a stern look. "I'll be filing my report with the board. We'll be in touch if we have any further questions or concerns." The threat in her tone was unmistakable. As the door closed behind her, John slumped against it, feeling drained. Iria approached him cautiously, her skin a swirl of concerned blues and greens. "John? Are we in trouble?" He looked at her, taking in her otherworldly beauty and the genuine care in her eyes. In that moment, he knew he'd risk everything to protect what they'd found together. "I don't know," he admitted, "but whatever happens, we'll face it together." Iria's hand found his, cool fingers intertwining with his own. "Together," she agreed softly. As they stood there, united against an uncertain future, John realized that his life had irrevocably changed. He'd crossed a line, venturing into uncharted territory both personally and cosmically. But looking into Iria's eyes, he couldn't bring himself to regret a single moment. The real challenge, he knew, was just beginning. They would have to navigate not only their own cultural differences and budding feelings, but also the scrutiny and potential backlash from both human and alien societies. It was a daunting prospect, but one John was surprisingly eager to face, because for the first time in years he felt truly alive, and he wasn't about to let anyone, human or alien, take that away from him. The days following the inspection were tense. John found himself jumping at every phone call, every knock at the door, expecting it to be Amanda Anderson or some other government official come to tear him and Iria apart. But as the weeks passed without incident, he began to relax. allowing himself to hope that perhaps they had escaped scrutiny. Aria, for her part, seemed determined to prove herself a model housekeeper and student of human culture. She threw herself into her duties with renewed vigor, peppering John with questions about Earth customs and social norms. But there was a new undercurrent to their interactions now, a simmering tension that neither of them quite knew how to address. One evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset, Aria turned to John with an uncharacteristically serious expression. "John, there is something I must confess." His heart rate quickened. "What is it, Aria?" She took a deep breath, her skin rippling with nervous energy. "I have not been entirely truthful about my purpose here on Earth." John felt a cold knot form in his stomach. "What do you mean?" Aria's luminous eyes met his, filled with a mix of guilt and determination. "I was not sent here merely as a housekeeper. My people, they tasked me with studying human emotions, particularly those related to pair bonding and mating rituals." John sat back, stunned. You're a spy?" "Not in the way you mean," Aria said quickly. "My people have no hostile intentions. We simply wish to understand. You see, John, my species has evolved beyond the need for individual emotional attachments. We function as a collective, sharing a hive mind. But in recent generations, some of us have begun to question this way of life." She reached out, taking John's hand in her cool blue fingers. "When I volunteered for this mission, I never imagined I would experience these feelings for myself." John's mind reeled. He pulled his hand away, standing up abruptly. "So everything between us, it's all been part of your research? Just an experiment?" Aria's skin darkened to a deep indigo. "No, John. That's what I'm trying to tell you. My feelings for you are real. They're more real than anything I've ever experienced, and they terrify me." John paced the porch, running a hand through his hair. "I don't know what to think, Aria. How can I trust anything you say now?" Aria stood, moving to block his path. "John, please. I know I've deceived you, and I'm deeply sorry for that. But I'm telling you the truth now, at great personal risk. If my people knew I had developed genuine emotions, that I had fallen in love, they would recall me immediately. They would see it as a contamination." The word love hung in the air between them, charged with possibility and danger. John looked into Aria's eyes, seeing the genuine fear and longing there. Despite his anger and confusion, he felt his resolve weakening. "What do you want from me, Aria?" he asked softly. She took a step closer, her scent enveloping him. "I want to stay. I want to explore these feelings with you. I want to learn what it truly means to be an individual capable of love and heartbreak and everything in between." John closed his eyes, feeling the weight of the decision before him. When he opened them again, he saw Aria watching him with bated breath. "Okay," he said finally, "but no more secrets. If we're going to do this, we do it honestly. Together." Aria's face lit up, her skin glowing with joy. "Together," she agreed. As they sealed their pact with a kiss, John knew they were venturing into uncharted territory, but for the first time in years he felt truly alive, truly connected to another being. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them as one. The following weeks were a whirlwind of discovery and deepening intimacy. John and Aria explored their feelings for each other openly, reveling in the freedom to express their affection without fear of judgment or reprisal. But their bubble of happiness couldn't last forever. The first sign of trouble came in the form of a letter from the Interspecies Relations Board. It was couched in polite, bureaucratic language, but the message was clear. John and Aria's living arrangement was under scrutiny. They were to report for a formal hearing to determine whether their relationship violated any ethical guidelines or posed a threat to diplomatic relations. John crumpled the letter in his fist, a surge of anger and fear washing over him. "This is ridiculous. We're not hurting anyone. How can they dictate who we choose to love?" Aria placed a calming hand on his arm, her skin a swirl of soothing blues. "John, we knew this might happen. We must face this challenge with dignity and strength. Perhaps if we can make them understand the depth of our connection, they will see that our love is no threat." John looked at her, marveling at her wisdom and composure. "You're right, of course. We'll face this together. But their troubles were only beginning. That night, as they lay entwined in bed, a piercing sound filled the air. Iria sat bolt upright, her skin paling to an ashen gray. "What is it?" John asked, alarmed. "A summons," Iria whispered. "From my people. They know." The next few days were a blur of frantic preparation and hushed conversations. Iria explained that she had a choice to make: return to her homeworld and face judgment for her emotional contamination, or seek asylum on Earth and likely never see her own kind again. "I can't ask you to give up everything for me," John said, his heart heavy. Iria cupped his face in her hands, her eyes shimmering with emotion. "John, you are everything to me now. My people, for all their advanced technology and collective wisdom, have forgotten what it means to truly live, to feel. I choose this life, with all its messy emotions and individual struggles. I choose you." As they stood before the Interspecies Relations Board, hands clasped tightly together, John felt a surge of pride and determination. They faced a panel of stern-faced officials, human and alien alike, all watching them with a mix of curiosity and suspicion. Amanda Anderson, the inspector who had visited their home, led the questioning. "Mr. Hawthorne, Mississippi area, please explain the nature of your relationship and how it evolved from a standard employer-employee arrangement." John took a deep breath, squeezing Aria's hand. "It's quite simple, really. We fell in love. I know it sounds cliché, but it's the truth. Aria came into my life at a time when I thought I'd never feel that kind of connection again. She opened my eyes to new possibilities, challenged my preconceptions about what it means to be human, what it means to be alive." Aria's skin glowed with a soft, pulsing light as she spoke. "On my world, we have a saying: the universe blooms in unexpected gardens. John and I are proof of this. Our love may be unconventional by both human and Xeraxian standards, but it is real and true. We ask only for the chance to nurture it, to see what beautiful things might grow from this unique union." The board members exchanged glances, some skeptical, others thoughtful. A reptilian alien leaned forward, its forked tongue flicking out as it spoke. "And what of the potential consequences? Have you considered the diplomatic implications if this experiment should fail?" John bristled at the word experiment, but Aria answered calmly. "With all due respect, every relationship is an experiment. Every connection between sentient beings carries risk, but it also carries the potential for growth, for mutual understanding. Is that not the very foundation of diplomacy?" The hearing stretched on for hours, with John and Aria fielding increasingly personal and probing questions. By the end, they were both exhausted but united in their resolve. As they waited for the board's decision, John pulled Aria close. "No matter what they decide," he whispered, "we're in this together. If we have to, we'll find somewhere else to go. Somewhere we can just be us." Aria's skin shimmered with emotion. "My home is with you now, John, wherever that may be." When the verdict finally came, it was better than they had dared hope for. The board granted Aria provisional asylum on Earth and gave tentative approval for her relationship with John, on the condition that they submit to regular check-ins and counseling to ensure the continued health of their unique partnership. As they left the hearing room, John felt a weight lift from his shoulders. They weren't entirely free from scrutiny, but it was a start. They had won the right to love each other openly, to explore the uncharted territory of their relationship without fear of forced separation. That night, as they lay in bed, Aria propped herself up on one elbow, studying John's face in the soft lamplight. "John," she said softly, "there is a Xeraxian bonding ritual I would like to share with you. It is intimate, more so than anything we have experienced together thus far." John's pulse quickened. "I'm listening." Aria's skin rippled with iridescent patterns. "It involves a melding of minds and bodies, a total union of beings. It is not something my people do lightly, but I cannot imagine sharing it with anyone but you." John sat up, taking Aria's hands in his own. "Are you sure? I don't want you to feel pressured." Aria silenced him with a kiss. "I have never been more certain of anything in my life." What followed was unlike anything John had ever experienced. As their bodies joined, he felt a sudden rush of sensation, as if his consciousness was expanding beyond the confines of his own mind. He saw flashes of Aria's memories, the vast crystalline cities of her homeworld, the feeling of being connected to the hive mind, the loneliness and exhilaration of individualism. And Araya, in turn, experienced the depth of human emotion, the highs and lows, the complexity of individual thought and feeling. As they moved together, lost in the rhythm of their shared passion, the boundaries between them seemed to blur and fade. When it was over, they lay entwined, both of them trembling from the intensity of the experience. John stroked Aria's cheek, marveling at the way her skin seemed to glow from within. That was, he began, struggling to find words adequate to describe what had just happened. Aria smiled, her eyes shimmering with emotion. I know. We are truly one now, John, bonded in a way few beings ever experience. As they drifted off to sleep, still wrapped in each other's arms, John felt a profound sense of peace settle over him. Whatever challenges lay ahead, he knew they would face them together, stronger for the unique bond they shared. The next morning, John awoke to find Aria already up, staring out the bedroom window with a pensive expression. He came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. "What are you thinking about?" he asked softly. Aria leaned back against him, her skin rippling with subtle patterns. "I was just reflecting on how much has changed, how much I have changed. John, I think I'm ready to fully embrace this new life, to let go of the last vestiges of my old self." John turned her gently to face him. "What do you mean?" Aria took a deep breath. "I want to experience everything it means to be human, including the ritual you once showed me, the one involving water and privacy." John's eyes widened as understanding dawned. "You mean you want to take a shower?" Aria nodded, a mix of nervousness and excitement playing across her features. "Yes, together, as a couple." The word sent a thrill through John. He took Aria's hand, leading her toward the bathroom. "Are you sure you're ready for this? It's a big step." Aria squeezed his hand. "I'm sure. I want to share everything with you, John. Every human experience. Every intimate moment." As they entered the bathroom, John felt a flutter of nerves. This was so different from their first awkward encounter in this space. He turned on the shower, adjusting the temperature to a comfortable warmth. Araya watched the water cascade down with fascination. "It's beautiful," she murmured, "like a contained rainstorm." John chuckled, helping her step into the shower. As the water hit Aria's skin, she gasped, her entire body shimmering with delight. John joined her, marveling at the way the droplets seemed to dance across her blue skin. "How does it feel?" he asked, reaching for the soap. Aria closed her eyes, tilting her face up into the spray. "Incredible. I had no idea water could be so sensual." John began to gently wash her, his hands gliding over her curves. Aria shivered at his touch, her skin flushing a deeper blue. As they explored each other under the warm cascade, John felt a renewed sense of wonder at the alien beauty of his lover. Their kisses deepened, hands roaming with increasing urgency. The steam swirled around them as they lost themselves in the moment, two beings from different worlds united in passion and trust. Afterwards, as they dried each other off, Aria looked at John with an expression of pure joy. "Thank you," she said softly, "for sharing this with me, for showing me what it truly means to be human." John pulled her close, breathing in her unique scent. "Thank you for trusting me, for opening my eyes to new possibilities." As they dressed and prepared to face the day, John felt a profound sense of contentment settle over him. He knew they still had challenges ahead, the continued scrutiny of the Interspecies Relations Board, the potential backlash from both human and alien societies. But in this moment, none of that mattered. That evening, they sat on the porch, watching the stars come out. Aria pointed to a faint cluster of lights in the eastern sky. "That's where I come from," she said softly. "It seems so distant now." John followed her gaze, trying to imagine the vast expanses of space that separated Aria's homeworld from Earth. "Do you ever regret coming here?" he asked, "giving up everything you knew?" Aria turned to him, her eyes shimmering in the starlight. Never, she said firmly. What I've found here, with you, it's worth more than all the collective knowledge of my people. You've taught me what it means to truly live, John, to love as an individual. John pulled her close, marveling at how perfectly she fit against him. And you've shown me that there's so much more to the universe than I ever imagined, that love can transcend not just cultural boundaries, but entire worlds. As they sat there, bathed in starlight, John felt a sense of infinite possibility wash over him. He and Aria had embarked on a journey unlike any other in human history. They were pioneers, exploring the uncharted territory of interspecies love. Whatever the future held, John knew one thing with absolute certainty. Together, he and Aria could face anything. Their love, born of two worlds but belonging to neither, was a force powerful enough to reshape the very fabric of the universe. As the night deepened around them, John and Aria remained on the porch, wrapped in each other's arms. They didn't need words to express the depth of their connection. In the vast, star-strewn canvas of the cosmos, they had found their home in each other. And that, John realized, was the greatest adventure of all. Dear readers, the story of John and Aria is not just a science fiction romance. It is a narrative about the power of love, capable of overcoming the most incredible obstacles. In a world where differences often divide us, John and Aria have shown that a true connection can arise between the most dissimilar beings. Their journey teaches us to look beyond appearance, culture, and even biology to see the essence of another. This story encourages us to be open to new experiences, to not fear stepping outside the familiar. It reminds us that love can bloom in the most unexpected places if we allow our hearts to be open. John and Aria faced misunderstanding, prejudice, and bureaucratic hurdles, but their determination and faith in each other helped them overcome every challenge. It is a lesson for all of us. When we find a true connection, it's worth fighting for, no matter what. May this story inspire you to seek understanding and closeness beyond the usual boundaries. Let it remind you that love is a force capable of uniting worlds and transforming lives. In the end, isn't this the essence of humanity? Our ability to love despite differences and to grow through that love? Thank you for sharing this cosmic journey of love with us. May it ignite a star of hope and inspiration in your hearts.